Military College is honored by another visit from Princess Elizabeth, taking the salute at a passing out parade. The two most proficient cadets receive autographed Sam Brown belts from the Princess in place of the swords of honor presented before the war. They also receive medals to commemorate this first landmark in their military careers. Then comes the call for 3 cheers.
Hip, hip! Hip, hip! Hip, hip!
Auld Lang Syne is the signal for the ceremonial march in slow time. Following the cadets comes the adjutant, the Earl of Cathcart, making his time-honored ride up the college steps at the end of another Sandhurst occasion in which the Princess has shared. London, 1941. With the Luftwaffe in top gear as the bombs rain down. The capital burns, and with it the historic House of Commons chamber, totally destroyed in the great raid of May the 10th. 1946 sees the Houses of Parliament little damaged outwardly, but with a big job of reconstruction going on within. Work has begun on the foundations of the new House of Commons, but there's plenty of clearing up to do first. Masons make a start on restoring and replacing stonework. Several new features will be incorporated in the new house, but it will retain that intimate atmosphere so well remembered in past debates. Like many of ourselves, the MPs have been without a home of their own for a long time, and Big Ben looks down approvingly at the start of his own building program.
At Hammersmith, Oxford are having a specially light boat made for them by the well-known craftsman George Sims. It'll be the lightest craft in the boat race for 40 years. On the light side themselves, Oxford don't want to pull any unnecessary weight from Putney to Mortlake. Though it contains less wood, the new boat will cost more than double those in which Oxford lost so often before the war. Remembering those bitter years, dark blue supporters are hoping the maker will surreptitiously incorporate a little jet propulsion. Meanwhile at Henley, Oxford are putting in their last few days before coming onto the Tideway for final training. The dark blues in this first peacetime boat race are the lightest crew on record. They aren't back yet to the traditional boat race diet of beef steak. RMT Rake's bow is here with the Cox R.E. Snow. Even with heavy crews before the war, Oxford had a run of bad luck. The present 8 are confident they'll put a stop to that and be the first of a long line of dark blue victors. Cambridge hope to keep up the custom of being first past the post. They are stroked by I.H. Neame and steered by G.H. Fisher. The light blues form so far has favorably impressed the critics, though some say they have more style than vigor. It's early days yet for the rest of us to make up our minds, but before long the whole nation will have boat race fever, and we shall all be in one camp or the other, light blue or dark. General Acre, first commander in Britain of the famous American 8th Air Force, received the freedom of High Wycombe, once his headquarters.
General Acre, it is my privilege to hand you this scroll and present you with this magnificent casket. Mr. Mayor,
I am deeply grateful to become a freeman of this ancient borough. I accept your great honor and kindness to me today, well knowing that you extend these kindly sentiments to me as a symbol of all that gallant group of American airmen who lived among you for 4 years and who fought in closest kinship with your own valiant defenders. In that spirit, representing all my people, I thank you from the bottom of an overflowing heart.
This was the scene 4 years ago when the General brought the first flying force to Britain. By the time Acre was transferred to Mediterranean Command, the 8th was a mighty force of 5,000 bombers with 15 fighter groups for escort. They achieved their aim of 1,000 bomber raids by day, while the RAF did the same at night to bomb Germany all round the clock. Now at Horrington, Suffolk, the last American bombing station was handed back to the RAF. Air Marshal Robb bade the General goodbye and then signed his name on the last fort. It was the end of a gallant chapter in Anglo-American history. At headquarters in Singapore, Lord Louis Mountbatten is pushing ahead with the task of getting war-stricken Malaya back to normal. On the food situation, he had good news when he broadcast to the people.
I have made it my business to ensure that Malaya gets as large a share of commodities and transport as possible. And I am glad to be able to tell you that 25,000 tons of rice arrived in Malaya in the latter half of December, and a similar quantity is expected in January.
Additional supplies of rice come from Penang, the island 2 miles off the northwest of Malaya. On the hill over the town, the Japs planned to make a last stand, and might have done so had not Tokyo surrendered. On the summit, they stored many tons of rice and big supplies of tinned food, now all being put to much better use. Meanwhile, the paddy fields of northern Malaya are yielding a rich harvest, the first since the war ended. Agriculture here is primitive, but the necessarily sodden rice fields don't lend themselves to the use of heavy machinery. Malaya is doing all in its power to stave off the threat of rice famine in the Far East. At Hong Kong, 1,500 miles from Singapore, the British have rounded up Jap war criminals responsible for the mass execution of scores of Chinese villagers on Lantau Island, just off the mainland. Native survivors were brought across to identify the men responsible. The company commander who led the punitive expedition to the island admitted guilt. He and his men were lined up and then marched to the prison to await trial. The Japanese prosecutor in Hong Kong during the occupation, Colonel Kogi, was arrested in Canton and brought to the Stanley prison, where in 1943 he ordered the execution of many Empire soldiers. The case against him is complete. The Japanese are being taught a lesson even they are unlikely to forget. Talk about Siberia. Southeast England's wintry weekend was enough for an Eskimo. March more than lived up to tradition and came in like a whole troop of lions. The snowfall was so thick, the wind so high, that main roads in Kent and that part of the world were blocked for more than a day. Hampstead Heath made a brave show at winter sports, but in London rapid thaw came on the heels of the snow. The fun was fast and furious while it lasted, though it didn't last long. Outside London, it was a different story. Italian prisoners were brought to the rescue of cars and lorries snowbound in deep drift. Hastings and other places were marooned. And all this just when the whole country had been saying how mild it was for the time of the year. Farmers lent tractors to help buses stranded on country roads. Wait till the bus goes was the only hope of would-be passengers. Well, March, having come in like a lion, can't be too quick for most of us, going out like a lamb.